Welcome to Assembly Required with Stacey Abrams. I hope you all had a chance to have a restful holiday with friends and family. Now that we're back, it's time to dive into the news that you may have missed. Pete Hegseth, head of America's Defense Department, has been accused of ordering the extrajudicial killings of 2 survivors of an American missile attack on a fishing boat suspected of containing some undisclosed amount of drugs. The 2 dead are among more than 80 killed during an undeclared war being waged in the Caribbean under the guise of defending U.S. citizens against the scourge of illicit drugs. This is what happens when Step 5 of the 10 steps to autocracy and authoritarianism take place. Step 5 is when loyalists are given unfettered authority and scant oversight. As both Democrats and now Republicans scramble to understand what happened, both parties agree that his actions may be war crimes. War crimes committed on the pretext of protecting Americans from the drug trade, a pretense eviscerated when the sitting president of the United States has announced his plans to issue a pardon for Honduras' former president, Juan Hernandez. Why is this a problem? Because President Hernandez was convicted in 2024 in New York State for receiving millions in bribes and partnering with cocaine traffickers to actually deliver illicit drugs to U.S. citizens. Men bobbing on boats off the coast of Venezuela, who received neither due process nor trial, have been summarily executed by the U.S. military. Yet a proven drug trafficker serving 45 years in prison after proceeding fully through our legal system has been given a get-out-of-jail-free card as a favor, one president to another, because autocrats look out for each other. You see, Hernandez isn't simply a convicted felon who used the power of the presidency to enrich himself and engage in breathtaking corruption. He was also credibly accused of manipulating the Honduran courts to stand for a second term despite constitutional barriers. Sound familiar? During his tenure, he had iron control of the Honduran Congress and the presidency. And when he stood for re-election, the vote was deemed fraudulent by the opposition and by international observers. In response, his government declared a state of emergency. They killed 30 demonstrators and arrested more than 800 protesters. According to the United Nations and the Inter-American Commission on Human Rights, quote, many of them were transferred to military installations where they were brutally beaten, insulted, and sometimes tortured. This is the man Trump intends to pardon in the name of solidarity. In Hong Kong, the tragic deaths of more than 150 residents in a devastating apartment fire was met by a dramatic display of charity and unity, as volunteers distributed food, water, clothing, and offered shelter to the survivors. In response, Chinese authorities began patrolling the area near the apartment complex and apparently evicted the donation centers, replacing them with state-sanctioned service providers. This wasn't done out of hyper-government efficiency, but as the South China Morning Post reports, because the city's national security police have ramped up surveillance, quote, against potential seditious and secessionist activities in response to residents mobilizing to help victims of the fire. You see, Hong Kong's leaders were afraid that citizens aiding one another in crisis might lead to questioning a government that is terrified of accountability. Well, closer to home, here in America, apps are being blocked because they help people know where American secret police might be planning a raid or planning to kidnap lawful residents. Palantir and others are suspected of linking together targeting technologies to spy on Americans using their home security devices, street cameras, and other tools. Nonprofits that invest in pro-democracy efforts face investigation by Republican-led inquiries coming from Congress and the administration. And protesters are increasingly under pressure to be careful of their right to assemble. Breaking government and civil society are steps 4 and 8, and they are bolstered by an overreach that convinces us that dissent is dangerous. Our most fundamental obligations in this time of authoritarian power are to recognize what we face, activate in response, and use our momentum to build the nation we deserve. Victories like election wins in November or the release of the Epstein files can be seductive, convincing us that we're only a few dominoes away from this regime toppling under its own ignominy. Congressional resignations and judicial smackdowns, like the dismissals of the Comey and James cases, are certainly good for the soul, but they cannot be distractions from what is really at stake. Democracy isn't an abstract. It's about the ability of families to eat at a time when food security is under attack and the worst is yet to come. It's found in the government response to exorbitant healthcare costs and the subsidies that serve their purpose and are now being threatened by Republican inaction. Look, I don't believe in democracy as a concept. I believe it is how we force the power we share with our leaders to be returned to us in the form of goods, services, and justice. Voting rights aren't a civic duty. They are the bedrock of ownership, true ownership of our nation, which is why we must push back against anyone who would diminish their effectiveness. Affordability isn't a complaint. It is a demand that socialism for billionaires be met by basic decency for the rest of us. Through the 10 Steps campaign, through this podcast, our campaign is to fight autocracy and authoritarianism. The Just Fix It initiative is going to advocate for affordable health care. This podcast and other venues are doing their best to help you know what is at stake because we can get this done. I'm focused on how we get what we deserve. And I know it sounds like a lot. So does this present moment. But we know how to do hard things. We know how to multitask. We know how to win. And I am here as a weekly reminder that we're in this together.